Okay, well, let's go into the direction of your slides that you have for us so that we can get to our objective with why we're talking about near-death experience.
Well, let's see. Well, basically, I had an interesting encounter several years ago that gave me a little bit of insight into what the near-death person experiences, although it wasn't a near-death experience per se. Back when I was in residency, my first year of residency in the psychiatry program, we do primary care training as well, and I did my primary care rotation at Providence Hospital in Southfield. And I remember it was a Sunday night in February of that year, and actually it was Monday morning around 5 a.m., and I had this dream. And in the dream, I was at a party, and as I left the party, got in my car, and was driving home. And on the way home, I noticed on the driver's side of the road an old beat-up station wagon with rust all over the place. And I recognized it immediately as my Uncle Gene's station wagon.
Okay.
Me and my brother used to laugh at him all the time for driving that car. We said, if that car was a house, it'd be condemned, man, because it was full of rust. It was hilarious. It was an old beat-up, I don't know what year it was, 1955, I don't know what year it was, but it was just full of rust. So I saw it, and I knew immediately, well, that's Uncle Gene's car. So I get out of the car, and I go to see if he needs any help. I'm standing on the driver's side front door, and I'm looking for him, and he's not in the car. And as I'm standing there, I notice my stepfather is on the other side of the car. He's on the passenger's side door.
And this is all in your dream?
All in my dream. And so I say to him, well, where's Uncle Gene? And he doesn't answer me. And so he starts to walk around the front of the car, and he's not, and I'm wondering why he's not saying anything. And so I ask again, where's Uncle Gene? And then he comes up to me and he goes, Uncle Gene is dead. And I was like, whoa, you know, and I remember in dreams you feel things very strongly. But, you know, I didn't feel things strongly because I was shocked because of Uncle Gene. I thought, as a physician, how is that possible? There's been no accident, you know, and it was a shock of more as like there's no way to die. There's not been any trauma. And so, but I didn't get a chance to say it. And the next thing he said was, Uncle Gene has died. He said it very emphatically, and the way he said it, suddenly I immediately became aware of two things. Number one, I was aware of the fact that I was in my bed having a dream. I knew beyond it. It was like I woke up, but I was still there.
And this was not during your psych rotation?
No, this was during my primary care rotation, yeah. So I knew that, but at the same time that I knew that I was in a dream, I knew that it was real. I knew that was really my stepfather. You know, it overwhelmed me. There was no way to describe it, but I knew with an absolute understanding that this was real. I have never had a feeling like that since, okay? Never anything like that. It was incredibly unique. And I thought to myself, wow, this is great. I got questions, man. I was so happy. And then, boom, I'm awake. And I was furious. No, I want to go back. I want to go back. That was fantastic. And I was mad. And so I got to thinking, okay, now what do I do? What do I do now? And so I wrote down everything, the whole thing. I wrote the whole thing down. All right, and then I just sat there and I got to thinking, I still don't know what to do. So I go to work that day and I come home and I didn't tell anybody, and I can't call him because I've never called him. All right, it would be weird. Well, hey, are you still alive? Had a dream about you. What do you say? Okay, so
that might not have been too bad.
Well, I never talked to him before on the phone my whole life. Why do I call him now? You know, I didn't know his phone number even. So anyway, 8 o'clock that night, I called my mom. Says, hey, Mom, you know, had a dream about Uncle Gene, okay? And I told her the dream. I said, guess what I saw? I saw Dad, you know. I told her the whole thing. But I said, don't tell Uncle Gene about the dream. Don't tell anybody about the dream. Just, you know, call him and just see if he's okay. So I'm waiting for her to call me back. 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock. Midnight rolls around. She finally calls me back and says, guess what? Uncle Gene's just fine. And so is everybody else. I'm like, what do you mean? What are you talking about? She says, well, I called Uncle Gene, and he was upset because there was a storm the night before. It knocked out one of his windows, but I wished him happy birthday, and he was happy, and he's perfectly fine. Nothing's wrong with him. So then I got to thinking, maybe the dream applies to somebody else in the family. So she calls all my brothers, tells them the dream, okay? They're fine. So she calls my grandmother, who calls all my other aunts and uncles, and tells them the dream, just to make sure everybody was fine, and everybody knows about my stupid dream. And so she called to reassure me that everybody was okay. I felt so stupid. I felt like I will never again talk about any of my dreams.
Any relief at all?
Oh, no, I was wondering, like, I felt so real. It felt so real. The next day I get a call from my brother. Guess what? What? Uncle Gene died. Like, yeah, you're funny. That's really hilarious. You're mocking me. And I use those very words. You're mocking me. I knew it was coming. I'm ready for it. I knew it was coming. He says, no, no, I'm serious. He really died. It took about 3 minutes to get it through my head that he really died. About an hour after I talked to my mother, he woke up having chest pains. And I read the autopsy report, and actually he had severe mitral valve prolapse secondary to a myocardial infarction, a heart attack. And what happened was, when he started having those chest pains, he got up and was going to call 911, but he was afraid that Adult Protective Services would be mad at him because his house was a mess. So he called his son instead, who drove over really quickly, got stopped by the police. And so by the time he got there, Uncle Gene came out of the house, crawled into the car, and explained what had happened and why he didn't call EMS. And on the way to Foote Hospital in Jackson, he died in the car on the way there.
I wonder if there's any association with the ruin of the light, the headlight on the vehicle.
I have no idea.
Wow.
But what I will tell you is, had everybody in the family not been told before it happened about the dreams, then I wouldn't have believed it myself. I would have rationalized and say that I had the dream after the event. I would, I don't, if I hadn't written it down and if I hadn't told people. But let me tell you, at that funeral, that was the wildest funeral ever, because everybody at the funeral knew about the dream before he actually died. So I mean, what that did, now from a faith perspective, what it did more than anything was, for not only myself but also the people in the family.
So that was near death for him. I mean, where does it?
Well, no, it was. What it comes down to my stepfather. I mean, because he was the one that came and explained that, and it essentially verified the fact. You know, we're talking about somebody from beyond coming and telling me about a future event, and the future event comes true. It verifies the story. It verifies that this was a real encounter with somebody from the other side. That was the first time something that verifiable had happened in our family. And it had the effect of reinforcing the spiritual in a big way. And so one of the reasons that evangelical atheists don't like this very subject is because it confirms the existence of the spiritual. If the spiritual self is a real thing, then how do you have atheistic, how can atheistic evolution be true? How can there be an evolutionary process that gives rise to all life without any outside overseeing intelligence? How do you, without intelligence, how do you not only produce bodies, but a spirit to go with it? How do you encode for a spirit in the DNA? It doesn't fit the pattern. That suggests that there was an intelligent designer. Okay, this phenomenon that's what it does.
Because an atheist would say that that would be assimilation, or an inanimate ancestor, or something that was not real, something that was an out-of-body experience, but not associated with the Supreme Being, but something that was...
No, it doesn't. You can't say that. No,
holographic,
it's not one of those things. This does not prove... I mean, you're going to have a difficult time proving Supreme Being. None of this you're going to get into a lab. This is where you have to... It comes down to, as humans, we make the association. Here's the association. If it's humans, we can exist as a consciousness that is invisible to the human eye. Okay, if that's true, then why is it such a stretch to believe in a supreme consciousness that is invisible to the human eye? Okay, see the problem here? Is that you say, well, when you want to say, oh yes, belief in religion is really stupid because it believes in this all-powerful Supreme Being and we can't even see him. Well, if you accept this, if you accept the paranormal on this level, you're saying that if people can exist as these, as intellectual consciousness with intellect, then is it really that big of a step? Okay, so it's related. It doesn't prove God, but the fact that the paranormal exists like this, that humans can exist outside of the body, it lends credibility, a lot of credibility, to what religion has been saying.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, we talked about this a little bit earlier, but this was when my first year when I was doing long-term therapy downtown, and I had a case of a woman. Well, Darlene and Ken had some relationship problems, their boyfriend and girlfriend, okay? And Darlene...
This is an actual case?
This is actual, yes,
okay.
real. No, I can't use a real name.
Right.
In fact, if I say her real name, we have to edit it out, okay? Because I can't use her name.
Please don't.
All right, but it was a long time ago, and hopefully she's not going to watch this. But it's a great case. I mean, it demonstrates some things. So anyway, Darlene had panic disorder, a little bit of agoraphobia, meaning she stayed in her house. Because when she was younger, her mom let her do, she was given too much freedom, and as a result, a lot of bad things had happened happened to her. So she had a lot of anxiety, and she would have panic attacks when she left the house for very long. But she still liked to date. I mean, she would still go out on dates, all right? But what would happen on dates is when she started having a panic attack, she would make her date take her home. She would not admit that she was having a panic attack because she did not want people to know that she had a psychiatric problem. Okay, and so she wouldn't admit it. She would just belittle them. She would just, I mean, she had a mouth on her. I mean, my gosh, no, she could remove wallpaper with her tongue. I mean, that's how she was. Yeah. The previous psychiatrist to me was scared of her. I would say he was really scared of her. So anyway, but so she would do that. She would get aggressive and that's how she'd make her dates take her home. Well, when she was out with Kenneth, she got her and Kenneth got along really good, and all of a sudden, a panic attack started. And so she started berating him. All of a sudden, she switched and started really being nasty and everything to him. You take me home now, you blankety blank blank blank. And he was like, what? What was that about? Who are you? What happened to Darlene a minute ago? What's up? And so he was shocked by it. And so she kept insisting. And so he decided, instead of taking her home, he drove her to a party store. Now, I don't know why. Kenneth never told me why he picked a party store. I presume he thought maybe you need a little brandy to calm you down. I don't know what he was thinking. So then he made the mistake of leaving the keys in the car and walking in front of the vehicle. She jumped behind the wheel and ran him over, bloop, bloop, and kept going. Okay? She literally ran him over with the car and kept going. And so she gets about 2 miles away before her panic attack starts to go away, and the reality of killing her boyfriend kicks in.
Well,
and she's starting to think, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Because she had children by this time, and she's worried, I've killed this man, I'm going to go to prison, it's a hit and run, and the words hit and run kept going through her mind. So she decided, well, I'm going to make this a non-hit and run. I'll stop at a payphone and call 911. Therefore, it's not a hit and run because I went for help, right?
Okay.
So she stops at a payphone, and she anonymously dials 911. She's about 2 miles away from the body. She still can't relax. So after making the call, she goes back to the scene, and she discovers that a city bus had been behind her, and the city bus driver had reported it, so the ambulance was already there. And they were putting him in the ambulance. She followed the ambulance to the hospital, and she took her about an hour or two to get up the courage to go into the hospital. So she finally does. She discovers that he's in intensive care. She goes to intensive care, and there, you know how you have the nursing station and the glass booths?
Sure.
She sees him in one of the glass booths, and the minute she lays eyes on him, he wakes up, and he looks at her, and then immediately takes his hands and goes, come here. Okay, and so she's happy. He's alive. Hey, I didn't murder the guy.
Right, right.
She's happy about that. So she goes over there, and the first thing he says, she expects to get yelled at, okay, but the first thing she says is, I saw you. She goes, what do you mean? He says, I saw you. He says that, my father went through something like this, and it happened to me too. He says, when you ran over me, I came out of it's like I got squeezed out of my body. And I remember sitting there looking at myself, and it didn't hurt or anything. I was like squeezed out of my body, and I looked at everything. And then, as I was amazed at this, I thought of you. And the minute I thought of you, I was in the car with you. And then he quoted her 911 conversation word for word. Word for word. And that freaked her out. It actually made her anxiety worse. The fact that she had been spied on, the fact that she had been spied on gave her another panic attack. Okay, all right.